There are a lot of games that could be described as nice.
Nice.
But when I went to Essen in 2019, there was almost 2,000 new games launched at that show alone. So just being nice might not be enough to cut it.
Ouch.
The Whatnot cabinet from Pencil First Games is, on the surface, a nice game. It continues their line of Zen-like titles from Herbaceous Sprouts, Sunset Over Water, and so on, with gorgeous artwork, a more relaxed playstyle, although I will argue in this very review that this is the least relaxed of the trio that I've mentioned, quadrotroblish that I've mentioned. Is there enough in this small box package to take nice to the next level? The game is about set collection with a tad of worker placement, a dash of worker placement, a dash of push your luck, and some tile laying. In the game, you are trying to fill up your Whatnot cabinet with curious items or curiosities in the form of curio tiles. Curio tiles come in a colour and a type. There are bottles, there are gems, they come in blue, yellow, red, green, purple, and then there are some special power titles as well. In the game, you are trying to make columns either match colour or be entirely different in colour, and rows either match type, which is not the picture but the little icon in the top left corner, or be entirely different in type. During the course of each round in a 3 to 4 player game, you'll be taking 2 tiles, and in this solo game or the 2-player game, you'll be taking 4 tiles, because that's double. That's how it works. The game's playboard has a turn order track along the top and then 5 action spaces along the bottom, and this is where the worker placement comes in. On your turn, as following the order along the top of the track, you will move one of the your coloured token down to the bottom row and take that action. That was my doorbell. I'm hoping my son's going to get it. Then the next player in turn order will take their piece and put it on one of the other spots that hasn't already been used. Now, in the solo game, this is even more important, but at the end of the game, you'll get points for where you finished up. So at the end of the round, you might have that, and then you push up, and the first 3 spots all give you points. In the solo game, then you get points whenever you choose one of the first 3 spots. Now that means that generally, you get more options the further to the right of the board you choose. Whichever action you choose to draw your tiles is going to dictate how much you push your luck. The first one, you simply draw 3 from the bag and play 2 of them. Whereas the rest of them involve interacting with what in the game is called the outdoors. That is up to, 4 or 5 tiles that sit on the board outside the action board. So you can look at those and decide that none of those are very helpful or all of them are very helpful, and that kind of determines where down the board you'll want to go. The second spot lets you draw 2 from the bag, one of which you must use, then you add the other one to the outdoors before taking one from the outdoors. The third spot lets you add 1 to the outdoors, then draw 2. The fourth spot add 2 to the outdoors, then draw 2. And the fourth spot wipes them all, adds 4 more to that. Add to that the chance of 2 bonus tiles, one which gives you a point, but you must draw a tile from the bag and use it in your cabinet, and the other which acts as the same as the 5th spot, letting you wipe the tiles and add 4 more and drawing 1 to replace that bonus tile. It's a system that works incredibly quickly and incredibly smoothly. If I had one hiccup at this point, it is that sometimes you play with people, let's call them people, who just simply want to push their luck every single time. And because that then dictates the player order, you end up going to very similar spots during the game. Now, this ultimately in a short game might not matter, but when your turn is spent doing the same choices every time, then that can become a bit of a problem, and it can become hard to get back to the front or get to the front of the turn order to have first choice. Ultimately, it's not been a big problem. I've played this at 1, 2 and 4, I was going to say, but it's clearly 3 players, and it's only really happened in 1 game. Now, I think I noticed it more because the game is over so quickly, but in a 3-player game, you still have a choice of 3 spots, so you still have a lot of options. My problem was that those 3 spots are always the N3, or mostly the N3. But there is that to be aware of. I think at 4 players that could become more of an issue for the person at the back, but generally there is always something good to do, and it's just a case of how much you want to push your luck. Placing the tiles on the board is quite a free and easy action. You can place them anywhere, as long as the space is empty. There are no powers to move them around once they've been placed. But to help you decide where to place them, outside of the scoring rules, are these achievement cards that can be claimed. At the start of the game, you'll play 5 of these out, and they can only be claimed by 1 player. Now there'll be things like placing each of the corners, same object type, different colours in a row, and these can make up for the points being less if you don't make matches. You see, making a match of the same colours in a column gives you 4 points, which you'll mark immediately using the tokens so everyone can see that you have lots of points. There's even a 0 point token for when you construct a row or column that doesn't score anything. But if you have every colour different, you'll only get 2 points. However, if you are able to tie that up with one of the public singular objectives that only 1 person can get, then you might make up for that downfall, as I did in my last game. There will also be one of these collective objectives out during the game, and they are generally, just double checking them, yeah, they're just a point for certain types of objects. So you might get a point for every creature. So the question comes, do you stick to the rules of scoring as written on the placement kind of player aid? Or do you just go wild for these objectives and hope that you score a few rows as well? And I'll have to say, both seem to work out quite well, especially when you factor in crowns. And that is a little symbol that is printed on some of the tiles, which is always worth a point at the end of the game. In my last game, my 10-year-old decided to ignore all the objectives, collect crowns and shells, which were scoring a point because of the public objective card, and then try and get the most perfect whatnot cabinet that he could. Unfortunately, he was 2 tiles off scoring the most perfect one, but he beat me by a point because I had focused on a combination of my cabinets layout and claimed 4 of the objective cards during the game, but I hadn't really focused on the public one, and I only got 1 point from that. It shows that even though this is a small, quick game, there are different routes to victory, and that is great. It's good to have that option in this game. In fact, apart from my complaint about the player order, I might say that I only have one other complaint, and that is this game is called the Whatnot Cabinet. It's beautiful. I'm not really aware what whatnot cabinets are. I know they are for curious items, but in my mind, the artwork, as lovely as it is, doesn't always strike me as curious items. So we have shells, we have leaves, creatures, and kind of crystals and stones and bottles, and they're all illustrated brilliantly and it looks great. But maybe it's my upbringing of surrealist humour, where when I'm collecting a curiosity, I don't just want to see an elephant, I want to see an elephant on roller skates with the body of a butterfly. I don't want to see leaves that I can see anywhere. I want to see weird and wacky, not four-leaf clovers or red, because they have to be for the tile, but like red normal leaves. I want to see weird and wonderful Venus flytraps and alike and more fantastic stuff. And I think there's a real missed opportunity there just to go for something that's a little bit more wacky. And maybe that will not have the wider appeal, and there's reasons for that. And maybe I'm missing out some of the history on whatnot cabinets that I don't know. But for me, that was just a bit of a mishmash as not being aware of the phrase other than whatnot cabinet. You know, I didn't really know what it was before that.
Where would you be if you fell down a hole?
Well, yeah.
What about the fog? Stuck in a hole! In the fog! Stuck in a hole! In the fog! In the middle of the night! With an owl!
Other than that, this adds up to be something that's more than a nice game. My wife and son don't play a lot of my games. They don't want to learn complex games. My wife really likes Azul. And this gets compared to Azul a little bit because of the tile laying and because of the patterns. There's sort of a central thing going on similar to Azul. But I tell you what, if I ever have people round and I'm trying to introduce a fun, quick to learn game that shows off the hobby positively, then I'd reach for this before I reach for Azul, because it's easier to teach, it's much quicker to play, it looks great, and I know Azul does too, but there are those kind of plasticky bits, and this has more interesting art overall, I would say, and it has a very tidy player aid. It's in a fantastic box with a fantastic insert, not that I'd see that, but it's like tiny as well. And the fact that the whole game can be fit into 20 minutes is really, really good. On deeper levels too, the question of whether you push your luck more for the tiles that you need, as opposed to go for something that might be seen as more safe, becomes increasingly more pressured as the game goes on. And this is why I would say it's the least Zen-like of the pencil-first titles, because at first you've got quite a lot of freedom. You'll look at the objectives, you'll try and place out and claim some of those, rather than concentrate on the colours and the items, you know, on their own. But as your cabinet fills up and you've got less and less space to play with and less spots just to throw something that wasn't in your plan, suddenly which space you get to can become a bit of a stressed out thing. And actually I would say I prefer this game at 2 players, because when it comes down to 2 players, you have 2 of your colour pieces on the board. And that means that each round you're getting 4 tiles, and you've got more say over what happens in this area here. It's not bad at 3 players, but 2 players I find it a bit more. I had a bit more control, a bit less chaos, a bit less randomness. I might get one action I didn't really want, but I've got a chance to do something else as well. I might, if I'm clever, get 2 turns in a row at the start of the board. And so on. And this 2-player mode is what the solo mode replicates amazingly well. Seriously, that was a burp I suppressed, but don't worry about it. A professional would cut it out. You know what you're getting here. And these solo cards just direct you as to where the solo player will go. So they might go there and they might remove all creatures, and then you add one from the bag. It's dead simple. There's no managing of their board. There's no score for the solo player. There's just a score for you, and you do your bits exactly as you would in a 2-player game, and it works brilliantly. The Whatnot cabinet has really given me more than I expected, and perhaps that's why I rue the artwork a little bit more than usual, because it looks nice. But the Whatnot cabinet is more than nice. And in a collection where I have far too many games, even I would say that, the Whatnot cabinet makes a case that it should be one that stays in the collection, perhaps even over the Mighty Azul?
Great. Really great.